Everything good? And Jill, so
Yes, we're live.
You got those special varieties of bananas there that retain a lot of water.
Yeah,
Hello.
they're getting plenty at the moment.
Putting them to good use.
Yeah. Yes, we've had a very wet spring. It's rained almost every day. And so the bananas are filling up with water, which is good.
Fantastic. So you're well prepared for the drought to come.
I think so, although this year we've been told we're having a La Nina, which tends to be more wet where I am and drier in the southern part of New Zealand. So they'll be looking at drought. We've had 3 years of drought. So hopefully it won't be so bad this year, because my planting is being delayed for my alley cropping. I've bought trees and I've got them in planter bags, but I've given a building to my neighbour and he keeps delaying taking the building away, and it's where I want to put the planting. So time's going by and he can't find the time to get this building. So it's a bit frustrating, but if the wet weather continues, it'll be okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and the best place for the seedlings is in the ground, isn't it? Sometimes we're holding the seedlings,
yes,
you know, in a month and 2 and 3 months, and it depends on our care, and our care is we don't know how to take, you know, such good care as nature does if you plant it and finally let it be. Obviously, if you're professional, you know, because it's quite a unique task to look after your seedlings.
Yes, yes.
Really,
so I've got a lot of.
When you get that.
I've got eucalyptus. It's one called Parvissimo, and I bought them in tiny little cells in the autumn, and I've put them in big planter bags, and they're getting acclimatized to here because they came from the south of New Zealand, which is much different. It has heavy frosts. We don't have any frost. So they're growing well, but I do want to get them in the ground.
Yeah, eucalyptus is specifically, I find them really fragile in the early stage of their lives, you know, when they're really fragile and very easily see them die off if you're not up to it with the irrigation and keeping it all nice and moist, and you know, it's not aired out enough as well. They can, you know, they can kind of mold really quickly, you know, kind of like rot really quickly if they're all together and too much water as well. So they're quite tricky, eucalyptus, as seedlings.
Yes, so the ones I've planted so far, I've put a little consortium of the eucalypt, some of the perennial kale. I think it's called walking stick kale. It grows 2 meters high and it lasts for years. And Israeli lupin. I don't know whether you know those. That's a very strong growing lupin it's a perennial. And I've forgotten what the other 2 plants are, and I've got them enclosed. We have 15-litre water bottles for those water stations that people have in their offices, and I cut the top and the bottom off, and that makes a fairly big protector for new seedlings that are planted out, and they're easy to take off when the seedling gets growing, but in the meantime it gives them that protection at the ground level.
Very good, very good.
So they look as if they're doing well, but then I've got a lot that haven't been planted, so can't do anything about that.
Well, the thing, it's not going to be so dry for you, you know, this dry season. I know it's good to dry up a little bit as well after such a heavy rain season like you're describing. Sometimes it's good just to see things just dry up a little bit.
A little bit would be wonderful.
Yeah, a little bit. I'm sure. In the mud. Nice.
In last week I was in Lençóis, and we had 280 millimeters of rain in 2 days.
Oh my goodness.
There was water coming out from from beneath people's doors in the streets. All the streets were the streets there, since it's a small town, the streets are made of small rock. You know, like the pavement of the streets is made from rock. There were places that there were these huge pans opened, and it rained more in 48 hours than it rained for the rest of the year. So yeah, that was pretty insane. I've never seen anything like it. Crazy. I've never seen 280 millimeters in 2 days.
That's a lot.
So maybe it will be a wet year. Let's see.
Yes.
Yeah, the rain's come out here as well. The rain's been really firm. Like in 30 days.
It started early.
We've gone for about 4 or 5 days with no rain in the last 30 days.
Yeah, we're about the same. And in the days that aren't raining, it's so hot, it's very hard to work. You know, the temperature just sloops up. And the plants seem to be coping with it though, although I've got a kind of papaya, it's called Rainbow Valley pawpaw, and it's a cross between Babaco and mountain pawpaw, and it's good for New Zealand conditions, has very large leaves, and those have been burned recently with wind and that hot sun on the days when we have had the sun, and yet basically almost every day has rained. So yeah,
it's a lot of rain.
Papaya's a little bit fragile. So I would like planting lots of it so that, you know, on the average, you know, some of them don't work out, some of them might become pale, some of them, you know, they're there to feed the birds. You know, when I plant papayas, I plant it out, you know, by seed and high density or whatever. And for harvest, really an expectation of about 30%. You know, I'm sure that's not, if it was my main crop, I'd want more of it, but it really is a nice service crop, you know.
Yes.
It is very fragile. It's not recommended so much in my climate here. But, you know, we're able to, if we can harvest 30%, and then, you know, the birds can have some, and just being peace. I love the information, the growth information of it. Recently, we've been planting some cedar woods, and I'm putting 2 papayas, 1 on each side. For every cedar wood, 2 papayas. You know, really really to boost that growth. You know, I really want that wood, you know, chasing after the papayas, really trying to play catch up and grow quite fast.
Right. Yes, we've had unusual wind here for us. It comes from the southeast, is a wind that we very rarely get, and that was quite strong, and that damaged plants that would normally have been very sheltered. So all different things happening, you know, it's quite changeable, isn't it?
And do you want to personally ask us the question about the Emmy?
Yes. Did you got the photograph I sent of the fungi?
Well, I saw that you were trying to send the photograph. I never saw it myself.
Oh, because I did reply to that email. I found I could cut and paste them into as a reply. So I sent 2. I sent the photographs of the bananas, the Abyssinian bananas, and also one of the pine needles with the fungi on them.
Did you get that, Felipe?
In Patreon?
No, I sent it as an email in a reply. You sent me an email saying that we would discuss the fungi, and I replied to that with photographs.
All right.
Through email, let me see.
Because when I replied on a message through the Patreon, it must convert it into email, possibly.
Yeah, I think they receive emails every time we send a message.
Yep.
Let's check it out.
Let's take a second to have a look.
But while I look this up, what exactly happened in the? Can you describe, actually, just for people to people who are watching, just to explain exactly what's going on? Right. So basically, Jill tries to capture microorganisms, right, from the nearby forest, and it didn't work out. But she found another way to do that through using pine leaves, pine needles. So first, I want to understand exactly how the process, how did you perform the process, and what went wrong exactly? You said they got slimy and kind of funky, right?
Yep. Well, I cooked some rice without salt and put it in a little mesh bag and put it in the forest. And I used, I've got a live capture rat trap, and it wasn't working well. So I put it as a trap. And so I put it on top of the rice to protect it from rodents and left it there on the forest floor. I scraped the litter and made sure it had contact with the soil. But then it's been so wet, I think, that the rice just went horrible. It didn't smell bad, but it went very wet and slimy and had a kind of a pink color. It didn't look healthy to me. I haven't looked at it since I put it to dry, and I haven't looked at it, but it didn't smell like fungi. So as a separate thing, I had gathered pine needles from living trees to make tea with. It was an experiment. Somebody had told me it's wonderful tea, but I didn't like it. It was just nothing. And I had the pine needles in a large plastic bag in the refrigerator, and I forgot about them. And when I finally got round to having a look in the fridge, I opened the bag up, and it had this wonderful fungi all the way through it. Beautiful, like long streams, like cotton wool. But there were little nodes, little rows of nodes along, and it smelled lovely. It smelled like mushrooms. And I remembered your description in your video of the smell. And so I thought these would be worth trying. So I cooked up some more rice and let that cool and put it in the bag and left it. And so far, the fungi has died off the pine needles, but it looks as if it's gone into the rice. And I did have a photograph of that too, but maybe you didn't get it. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm looking here in the email, and I didn't really find it. I don't know. I checked the spam folder, everything. I didn't see it here, unfortunately. It got lost.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're gonna figure out to get that picture later.
Right.
But yeah, pine needles are pines in general, both pines and casuarinas, which are not exactly pines, but they look like pines.
Yeah.
They're both very good at associating with microorganisms, so it is a pretty good place to get to capture microorganisms.
Right.
And that's a pretty interesting process. The thing there is, you're probably going to be getting like probably only one species, which apparently is like the one species that flourished. But there's probably going to be a lot of spores from other species that maybe don't show up so much.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, if it's working, if it smells good, it's all good, I guess.
Yes,
you
so
can definitely try that out.
I could try using that and making up a liquid mixture.
Yeah, and now you multiply it in. If you think the rice has already been colonized, you now multiply it in water with sugar.
Yep.
As I showed in the video.
Yes.
And leave it for a few days. Just one question: how long did the rice stay for in the forest?
It was at least 3 weeks, possibly more, because our temperatures aren't as high as yours, and I thought it might take longer. But I looked at it every week.
Okay. Didn't you see fungi forming before the rice got slimy?
I could see little white dust in the soil when I put the rice there, but I didn't see any forming on the
No,
rock.
but oh, you never saw anything on the rice? The rice just went straight from good to slimy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
as I say, it
that's-
was very wet. The soil, like you could hear the water running over the soil.
Wow.
Yeah. It's just continual downpour. You know?
Okay.
So maybe that was the problem.
Yeah, it could be. Maybe that could have been a problem. Okay, but glad that you found a way to do it. Anyway, try it again in
Yes.
when you have the drier climate. See if that was the problem indeed.
Yes.
See if it's going to work out.
Yeah.
Because right now it's summer, temperatures are higher. I mean, it's not summer yet, but it's spring. We're getting there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to find out what happens.
Right. Yeah. That's good. Yeah.
Cool.
Nice. And Felipe, you think we can be trying that out here in going into the drought as well, as long as we find a nice cozy place by like a waterfall and something like that?
Oh, you can do it now because now it's the best time to do it, right? To capture microorganisms. But yeah, we can definitely do that. Probably in the bottom of the valley. That's probably a good place to capture the microorganisms in your place. I've got some here as well. If you want to, I can give a bit to you, and you can multiply it there. But they're microorganisms from Bahia, so you know.
Hard to find.
let's see how if they can work well here in Brazilian. But we can definitely try it out.
You back?
It smells so good. Yeah, I'm back.
Nice.
Arrived yesterday.
Nice.
Yesterday. Cool. We have another question from Peter, but it is a very complex question. I think it's going to be a bit too much to discuss here because Peter, but actually there's another thing that I think we could bring from Peter's message, which I think it's quite interesting. So Peter is working on a project in, where is it again? The Dominican Republic. Do you remember, Gennaro? Yeah, Dominican Republic.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, so he's partnering up with this friend of his. Apparently, they want to basically plant cacao as the main crop. And so he was asking us about not only ideal spacings and which species to put together with cacao, but also, let me try to find his question here. He was asking about general tips for partnership deal, because he's trying to strike a partnership deal with this friend of his. And this is something that has been more and more common recently. At least I see that. I don't know if you have been seeing that, Gennaro, but a few days ago, I'm trying to remember who it was, but some friend of mine or client, I don't remember exactly who it was. They were asking me about. Oh yeah, I just remember. It was a client last week. They're going to start a new project, and I'm helping them out with the project. And they want to do something that has a social impact. So they want to do to have a better deal for workers who will be working with them than just having them on receiving a salary every month or so. So they were thinking of doing something like a partnership. And I've been seeing this sort of initiative happening more and more, like people who own the land, they hire workers, but these workers, besides receiving a salary, they have a percentage of a plot, or they have a plot of their own that they can cultivate and sell along with the other products of the farm. And so Peter was asking us about, since he's coming in as the expert and as the worker, and he's going to partner up with the guy who has the land, he was asking us for tips on, what sort of partnerships he could work with. And one thing that I find very interesting for an expert that's coming, to bring expertise to the field and have a partnership with a farmer, is to have some sort of like a mixed deal in which he can, like the work he's going to do has a specific value which he could be compensated with, but that value can also be converted into a percentage of the business, let's say. So that's one way to work. Or if he's in a position that he doesn't need to have an income right now, I think it just started raining, he could offer the owner of the land to get a full percentage, I don't know, 20%, 30%, 48. Of course, it depends on the deal and how much work he's going to be putting into. But one thing which is very important in any sort of deal that you have that is not a strict hiring deal is that you need to have very clear your exit strategy. So if the owner of the land wants to kick you out for whatever reason, it happens, partnerships fail. So if he wants you out, if it doesn't work out, you need to have a very specific plan for what happens when that contract is dissolved. And I remember I had a friend of mine who would say, contracts are meant specifically to be broken. And if you think about it, it makes sense, because you use a contract when you want to end the partnership. When do you use a contract? When you want to end the partnership, and you have it written down what happens when you end the partnership. That's what contracts are for. So you need to have an exit strategy, both, Peter, for himself if he wants out, because of course he on the side, on the more technical side of the business, maybe he needs a certain amount of resources to make things roll and flow, and the owner of the land is not willing to make those resources available for whatever reason. Maybe they need to make the business at a certain scale so that it can be profitable. Maybe the owner of the business doesn't want to. Anyway, he might choose to leave for whatever reason it is. So they need to have an exit strategy. Like every partnership needs to have a clear exit strategy. So anyway, I just thought I'd bring that up because it's something that has been, I've been seeing more and more, people doing these business contracts, which are not specifically a hiring you for this amount. There are percentages involved and all that. And I think it's a great way actually to work with people who have some sort of like real potential and the ability to make decisions and have proactivity to make things work. Because people who are just on a payroll and they receive a check every month, they have no stimulus to do more, right? But when your compensation depends on the profitability of the company, then you've got every reason and every motivation to do more than you're asked of, right? And you actually start having ideas to make things better. How can I lower costs? How can I improve profitability? How can I improve productivity? So I think it's a pretty interesting deal.
It's such a complex universe.
It's a complex universe.
Such a complex universe, isn't it?
It's hard to navigate it. It's not simple, but it's got a great potential.
Yeah. Recently I've seen here where we had a neighbor, she had the land and she was with the investment. So she would buy all the seedlings, all the manure, and she had the land. And then she had a family living there, which would execute everything with planting and harvesting and packaging and things like that. it was balanced, and it worked for a couple of years, actually, surprisingly so. It was balanced. They had a difficulty where the gentleman who was working there, he wasn't so aligned with the principles, you know, it was organic certified, but, you know, it was hard to get into his mind, you know, that we should be covering the soil, for an example. She couldn't say much because he was harvesting, you know. He wasn't optimizing things. He was spending a lot of time, you know, weeding and things like that. So it was a bit frustrating, and in the general health, in the general margin of loss. But yeah, I mean, it worked for a while until the relationship got a bit sour, and then it was a little bit difficult to break that. But I mean, it worked well because I think one of the values, one of the highest values, is the labor which executes it. That's high value. I mean, knowledge is really high, but labor is really costly. So I really value labor. I valued the labor. So it's how to value things and level them out, right, in a negotiation. I feel that the person who has the land, and that's all he's got, you know, if all you have is the land, it's, in my eyes, it's one of the least valuable things. Because it's almost like a lot of people have land. You know, not everyone that wants to plant has land, but a lot of people that don't want to plant have land, that wish something was happening in their land. A lot of people have, you know, obsolete land, and they're like, oh yeah, you can do this in my house, you know, or they're dying for it. You know, it's all gain because they have the land, they're not doing nothing, they live in the city and they've got this land who's sitting there. And I find that there's a lot of land available like this where people, you know, will jump into an opportunity or say, oh, I've got the land, would you want to plant in my house? You know, I think that's the least valuable in these cases when you compare it to the investment, because planting is expensive and someone's actually having to go out their way. I know that someone to have land, you know, they've earned this in the past or whatever, but there is a lot of availability. Whether, you know, an investment, you really need to be putting money in on something that, you know, you haven't harvested yet. You know, this land is not going to go anywhere, so you can't really lose. Really
you can lose it in small installments if the person working there is doing a bad work. Like you can lose soil by erosion. Of course, it's a slow process, but just you know, it's possible.
Yeah,
but
I mean, one would
totally
think
true. It's totally true what you're saying, and this is the reason why there are many big companies, like big producers of grains and other stuff. They will pay people to use their land. They will make huge investments, fertilize the soil, work the soil, invest a lot, and give the land back to the owners improved, and they will be paying for it. So there are many people who have like degraded pastures, for example. People will come, pay them a lease, plant their grains, replant the pasture for the owner, and leave. So the owner gets money, gets his pastures improved, and the people who lease go to another farm. So this is there's a lot of land available. That's why I think I was speaking about this with a friend the other day. Those who are able to make profitable businesses in degraded land will have a lot of opportunity in the next in years to come, because traveling through the semi-arid of Brazil, I always see how much free land there is, and it's completely degraded, and it's owned by older people who only have the land still because they love it. They don't really have a profitable business there. They just like to have their cattle to get milk because they grew up doing that, so they're unable to do that. I've met many younger people who say, "Oh, my father or my grandfather, he doesn't let go of the land, and none of the kids want it, none of the kids work with it, but the land is there, so and he's still alive." Eventually, these people won't be able to work the land anymore. I don't know, in 20, 30 years. And there's going to be a huge amount of available land, either for sale or for lease, but it's degraded. So, and then people who know how to work that will have a huge opportunity in hand to.
So that's it. So who's going to make the investment? Labor-wise, fertilizing.
Exactly.
Their investment. So, I mean, land is available. Who's making the investment? Who's planting? Who's executing? And
who's selling?
And even though like the knowledge is very important, like our consultancy knowledge and the people who know how to work that, it's almost, for me, it's the most valuable, but you can hire that as well. You can hire that knowledge, you can have that consultancy, and still the most expensive is the labor and the investment, so whoever's putting in the money, thinking, ends up, having bigger rights. I don't know. I mean, it's
of course,
it's where
no doubt.
It's it's what makes it happen. I don't know if it's a sour way of thinking or whatever, but if you make it happen, if you have the money. If you don't have the money, you don't make it happen. You can have the land, you can have the knowledge. If you haven't got the money, it's not happening.
Actually, can I just add the labour, Gennaro, in New Zealand, it's very, very difficult to get good labour that really knows how to work. We seem to have got a whole generation of younger people, that's anyone under 50, who have been able to either have social welfare benefits, a government payout if they can't get a job or they won't get a job. And there seems to be a whole generation of people who really don't know how to work hard. Like, as you know, agroforestry is labour intensive, and once you've started a job, you have to finish it. I find, even though I pay top wages, people will come here and they'll start doing a job, and then 2 hours later, they've got the toothache or they've hurt themselves or whatever, and they just don't come back. And I'm not asking them to do bad jobs. It's just hard work, the sort of work that I've been used to all my life. And I can actually often work harder than they can. And I'll be 79 next week. So it tells you that they really don't know how to work, and they don't have the mindset. You mentioned it before, I think, Felipe, about people not having the right thought to cover the soil. And, if you have to stand over them and tell them every little thing, it's not worth, like, you're better, I think, to just pot, as I do on my own, do as much as I can and try and not let anything get too far back. But one solution I can see, and it is happening here in New Zealand to a certain extent, is cooperatives, where you get maybe 10 people who haven't got the land, they're interested in permaculture, maybe they're not working, maybe they're getting a social welfare benefit, so they're not permitted to earn more than, I think it's about $80 a week they can earn before it affects how much they get from Social Security. So they will come, so that's only about 3 hours they're prepared to work for each week, if they get, say, $30 an hour.
Just one question. How much is welfare in New Zealand? How much do people get from Social Security?
It varies tremendously depending on why they're getting Social Security. I think for a single person without any dependents, it's under $200 a week, which I think the average wage is about $600 a week. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I think that to give you a comparison.
Okay.
But that's the basic benefit, is about 200. But you can apply for more, like if you get asthma or if you've hurt your foot or whatever. But then we have another kind of welfare, which is accident compensation. So if you have an accident, whether you're working or not, and you put your claim to the Accident Corporation, ACC, if it's accepted, you get 80% of what you were earning when you were working.
Okay.
And you get free medical care for that. So
what you're saying, is even when you pay good wages, as in like you're investing, sometimes it's hard even to get things off the ground when you're relying on labor and things like that.
Yes, very difficult.
I've been working on a plot recently. We planted about 1.5 hectares. Did we smack that down in about 3 months flat? We're about a week away from ending. And yeah, it's really hard work. But if we had high turnover in 3 months, man, high turnover and like a lot of like storms and things like that. Because I mean, we're out in Brazil and we should find a few young chaps up for it. Still very difficult out here. I suppose it's easier here than most places around the world. Very difficult because it is hard work, isn't it? It is hard work. We do certain level of mechanized work, but it's out in the sun, isn't it? It's out in the sun, it's out in the rain, you know, and, you know, it's complicated. And we do try to compensate them well. We do try to invest in them, you know, if they're interested, then, you know, we'll take it up, you know, with the course. And so it's all about that, isn't it? Giving back to people that look after you. But that's it. I mean, because these people, if they don't see a light, if they don't see that, you know, how can you become bigger? How can you, you know, become a manager and then, you know, own your own farm through weeding? They need to see a path. So really, you need like a good employers who would give something back. But I mean, for me to give someone a little square of land as a thank you, you know, you'd have to be with me for like 10 years, you know, like, you know, you've been with me, you've earned it, have your little plot in my house, this is yours now, you know, but it's very difficult, isn't it? It's very complex.
It is. I've had a lot of success before COVID with what we call WWOOFers, willing workers on organic farms, and that's an international, you probably know the
yes.
concept. We had and I had a lot of success with them. I've got very basic accommodation because my house has only got 2 rooms, so I can't have them living in the house. So I've set up in my car garage, I've set up a bedroom there, and I had people from all over the world coming regularly, and they were quite happy for the temporary accommodation. And most of them, if I had a project ready, I found that really effective. They would want to see the project finish or they're part of it, and they would work really well. I had 1 or 2 people who didn't know how to work or didn't want to work, and you know, a small portion, but mostly those projects that people did, they had completely different skills. A lot of IT workers and people who worked like digital animation, that sort of thing, where they were sitting all day. And some of the biggest cities in Europe, you know, life's not very nice. You work all day and too tired to do anything, go home at night and work all day. So when they came to New Zealand and stayed in the country and could see a project with a future rather than just repeating the same things they do at work, they really enjoyed that. And I had some people who came back 3 times in a year They usually have a 1-year holiday work visa here, and they would come back 3 times because they enjoyed being at my place, and I cook really well. But it doesn't have the same impact for local labour, which I find really strange. It must mean that our local people have not known real difficulty, because some of the people I had from places like Poland, Estonia, Chile, I had quite a few from Chile, Spain, they all said how free they felt and how positive the energy was here. But it doesn't seem to rub off on the locals. So now we can't have the woofers and the workaways because of COVID restrictions. And that has impacted really badly on our permaculture society in New Zealand. We're all finding that we're short of labour, of effective labour. Yeah.
Yes, I appreciate that. And I know how positive it can be, voluntary labour. There is 2 profiles of people. That, I mean, I think there's that kind of person which just needs a break, needs a holiday, you know, that's just out there, needs a holiday. And there is that kind of person who is out there also to learn, because he has a plot of land. And so it's a different profile. Even when someone, they're like, have a land, could I visit your farm and stay for a few weeks, you know, because I want to get inspired. So we kind of select a little bit. We're quite selective to receive the volunteers. Really has someone who would like to be planting or is planting or has an opportunity to plant, rather than someone who's necessarily just needs a break from the chaos. You know, this is because, you know, because we live off this, so we really need that level of attention. You know, because it could be, you know, between harvest or no harvest, you know, it make the difference. Out here, we're setting up now some dorms to receive people. But there is a few difficulties where if I have 1 or 2 people, because it's an exchange, I need to give, obviously I need to give back as much as I receive from them. So I need to, you know, explain, and I need to make their time worth it as well. But once you take this time for 1 or 2 people, sometimes it's not optimal enough. So we have a plan to receive groups of people. See, if I can receive a group of people where they'll be here for, you say, like a 6-week period, and we've got a group of like, you know, 6 to 10 people coming over, and then you can really take the time to invest in them, because that's multiplied by 10. And then you can have a proper program, you know, like a 6-week program for them. So in this way, this is the plan that we have for my farm, where we receive groups of people, you know, and then for a period of time, but we have a program for them, so it's worth it, you know, they're learning. And also for me, it's like I can invest the time because it's going to be optimal. And also with the whole cooking thing, I mean, I have a family, lots of kids around and things like that, and I have a routine, crazy routine. So the cooking thing is a problem for me, you know. So even like when someone comes around and it's, you know, if I have a 6-week routine, you know, I'll hire someone to make the food. Because if one person comes around, then, you know, it doesn't justify me hiring, and then I got to, you know, come home like 9 o'clock, 8:30 from picking up kids in the city at nighttime from night school, whatever, and I got to cook, and it's too much trouble, you know, because of the routine. So we've got to balance it and find a pattern that works for each person. I appreciate how valuable they have been for you and how they are. So it's inspiring to hear that you have found many good volunteers. We're setting up a program out here, but with just a few tweaks on that to make sure, you know, that it works for us as well.
Okay. So what is the situation where you are with COVID restrictions?
Well, at the moment, everyone here is just finished taking the 2nd dose. So things are starting to open up for real. This week, they've said that, you know, by law, you don't have to wear a mask on the street anymore in an open area. So this is a few breakthroughs on this front. I know for a fact that, for example, Brazil and England, they were having a thing where, you know, if Brazilians had to go to England, they had to quarantine 15 days. So it's more of a political thing. So, you know, the Brazilians are like, all right, well, if English were to come here, they're going to quarantine 15 days. More of a like, you know,
yeah, tit for tat, yeah.
Have that back and things like that. So there's a little bit of politics, but in general, it's not the case. My friend's just flying in from Thailand, he's just coming straight. So I think it's just where we're not allowed to go, they're not allowed to come. It's one of those cases.
Right.
But things are opening up because everyone's like really well into their second dose of the vaccine. So I think, you know, kids are back in school, you know, in the last month or so. So things are opening up. And this is it, because I actually had a program for people due to come in last year. 12 people were coming in on the 6-week program and it was cancelled. And then we tried again this year and it was cancelled again. So you know, so I'm kind of waiting to begin this kind of social project. So we're waiting on that.
There's something in your camera now.
Yes, flies. It's a fly.
Okay.
Well, I think Pete said about, if we could just round up Pete's question, he said something about, you know, the alley cropping, what he could be growing in the center as well and things like that. I'd just like to bring to the attention, you know, obviously I'm sure he's aware of it, but often, you know, it's good to work with the grass that's there as well, you know, because think about it, to produce something is more investment, it's more labor, and he's got 1.5 hectares going on. He's already got to plant out 1.5 hectares worth of trees and, you know, seedlings and everything. If he wants to, you know, maximize those alley crops, you know, it could, depending on the labor and depending on how far he stretches, often it's good, you know, to look after what you have and use the existing vegetation there as mulch for the tree lines. You know, I'm trying to, you know, keep my feet steady on the ground, you know, and know how much we can, you know, how much we can get done. I'm not saying he hasn't got the potential to fulfill this, you know, with sweet potatoes, with corn, with beans and other stuff like that. But do consider the existing vegetation that you have in the corridors for mulching and to make the most out of your tree lines. Possibly, you know, for the first year, 18 months, you know, while you're still, you know, your tree seedlings are still baby and, you know, while you're still, you know, recovering from maybe some potential investment or anything like that. Surely he wants to use successional harvest so he can be harvesting, you know, from straight away. I appreciate that. You can do a lot of that in your tree row already. Like, you know, you have your cassavas and your yams, and, you know, you can have your gingers and things like that in the tree row where you have your successional harvests without necessarily having to plant in the corridors. And I mean, if you, it's more resources. If you want to make, you know, harvestable crops in the corridor, it's more external resources, more manure, it's more everything. It's a lot more investment. So, you know, if you, instead of investing, you can actually harvest something that might be existing, you know, if there's an existing vegetation there, and actually work to harvest what you have rather than investing in something to harvest, you know, and maybe you're making a plan in the corridors, investing to harvest, and you're like stealing away from the land while you're harvesting this, rather than, you know, harvesting what you have and making the most of what you have and going through maybe a slower process, but, you know, a more sustainable process where, you know, working through the processes to achieve. It's just another idea, because you asked about, you know, ideas for corridor crops.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, working with the vegetation that's already on the spot, it's pretty interesting because it's very cheap to do. One thing that I often like to do is to do that and gradually enrich the vegetation in between the corridors. You know, so if you're already, because usually the vegetation that's already there, well, not usually, but often it's not the most effective biomass producer. Very often you've got some weeds with few leaves and, you know, kind of a bushy thing, but it doesn't produce that a big amount of biomass that we expect. But one way to improve that is to gradually insert other species that can grow there without the need to actually prepare the soil and incorporate fertilizers and stuff like that. One species that I'm very fond of is pigeon pea for that, because it will grow in compacted soils without a problem, and it will grow in the middle of other plants also without a problem. But then of course there are many others that can be used. There's black velvet beans, jack beans, sun hemp, and a bunch of others that will be able to grow there in the middle and increase the production of organic matter and soil improvement. So that's a pretty good one.
All of those are fantastic and very, very advisable. Often I've seen people around here, for example, wanting to introduce, Mombasa, because we know Mombasa produces a lovely amount of volume. Obviously, if it shades out, there's that extra factor where the Mombasa withholds shade better than the Brachiata. But I'm seeing people trying to remove the Brachiata to introduce the Mombasa. Often you can just work with the Brachiata. Give a chance to the vegetation, the existing vegetation. So consider, obviously, I don't know the situation there. He sent us a big project. This is the problem, Pete. The project is massive. We have to look at it with detail. If you were here, maybe next time round, you can explain to us, some of the details, and we can work on that further.
Exactly. Yeah, this thing that I was actually talking with a client today, and he was saying how he wants to buy this new variety of panicum, right? So it's called paredão. I don't know if you've heard about it. It's supposedly the most productive panicum there is, and all
nice.
That.
I love it.
And yeah, it's nice, but that's the thing, I told him, look, the more productive it is, the more demanding it is. There's no magic formula there. Oh, my grass is not producing so much, so I'm going to take it out and put another one that will produce wonders. But your grass is not producing so much because your soil is degraded. So first you have to fix all the management problems that you have inside the farm before thinking of bringing in another more productive grass. And people are always trying to bring the more productive because they think that it's intrinsically more productive in any situation, and it's not. You get a low fertility soil, Brachiata is going to produce more than Mombasa. Mombasa is not going to grow so well. Brachiata will. So it's all a matter of understanding under all the circumstances you have: soil fertility, sunlight, and rainfall. So these are the three important ones. And then environmental factors of your system. Like, do you have shade? Do you have organic matter? All of that, of course, it will have impacts on the soil fertility and the well-being of the plants that you're trying to introduce. But you need to take into account all of these to see which is it's not about being the most productive plant. It's about being the most effective plant in that situation. It's about optimizing. It's not about maximizing. Usually, the only thing that in an agricultural system that we want to maximize is sunlight absorption. That's the only thing that we want to do as much as possible. All the rest is more of optimization than maximization. So that's a good rule to follow. And then, of course, the species we choose will play a big role in that. Making the most out of the resources available.
Absolutely. And so give back to your Brachiata. If it's weak, cut it back, feed it back with itself, let it work before you start harvesting. Build on that, because to manure grass organically, unless you kind of chop and drop in, it's a little bit of a nuisance, to be spreading out chicken manure on grass, on hectares worth of. So really, the chop, you feed it back with itself and let it grow and let it, you know, beef up and nice.
Exactly.
Ooh.
In relation to grasses, seeing we're talking about grasses, I'm looking at investing in vetiver grass. Have you got experience with vetiver? This is because my section is steep, it's sloping, and with all this water, everything runs to the bottom of it. So I thought if I put on contour rows of vetiver grass, which has these deep, deep roots, that might help stop the erosion, so, or the leaching. Do you have experience with vetiver at all?
I've had a few plants. It's a good plant. It indeed has very deep roots, supposedly. I've never dug them up to deep enough to find, but I've seen pictures of roots going down to incredible amounts.
Yeah.
I didn't find it to be so productive in terms of organic matter. So that's
oh, okay. Because it's supposed to be able to be used as fodder and bedding, isn't it, for animals?
Yeah, I think you can use it.
As well as biomass.
In our conditions, in our conditions, I didn't find it that its resprout takes a lot longer than other species in our conditions.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I've taken a few, I have a few plants that I've had for about 4 years, but I planted them and ignored them. And it's in what I call my tropical food forest with bananas and guavas and tamarillo and that sort of thing. And it has had too much shade. It doesn't like shade. But I've recently divided those up and followed the instructions, which came from mostly from Africa and Asia. And they talk about them putting sprouts out in 5 or 6 days. It hasn't happened here. I've done everything. Yeah, well, I've got a few sprouts, but they talk about, they call them tillers, the little new shoots. And they talk about getting 13 tillers in 5 days. And I think I got 2 in 14 days. So maybe... Wait, that's my little dog. Sorry about that. Yeah, so I think well, it's interesting that you didn't get the growth that you expected either, because I think
out here I had some dying on me. I kind of like just planted it off, you know, by I had some of it dying when I planted it. It didn't survive, but you know, it's like, you know, me introducing it in the valley with very, very poor soils. So it's like it looks like the kind of thing that needs the care, like everything else. You know, you need like a nice nest. If I gave it a nice bit of manure, some covering around both sides, you know, at the right time of the year, plant it. So you need to give it love. And you know, it seems to me, you know, had I had it by seed, you know, am I cutting out?
Yep.
Yeah, a little bit.
Have I cut out?
Yeah, now you're back. You just, we heard, have I had it by seed? Yeah, now you're gone. You're gone, and your picture's frozen in a funny face. I'm gonna take a screenshot of it for your profile picture. That's perfect. But yeah, honestly, I think the best plant to stop erosion is the most vigorous grass you have around in your area.
Yeah.
Because it's all about, well, there are 2 things for erosion prevention, right? First is drainage. The water has to be able to infiltrate and drain. Yeah. Plants to do that are trees, and for fast growing plants, pigeon pea and daikon, radish, sun hemp, stuff that has very deep roots and that they're gonna kind of perforate the soil and create macropores that will allow the water to infiltrate vertically fast. so that you don't have superficial or subsuperficial runoff. So that's one thing. The other thing is surface structure. So if your soil is not structured in the surface, the water, like just the splash of a raindrop, will pulverize the soil, and particles will start flying down, right? So you need water to infiltrate quickly so that you don't have superficial runoff and you don't have subsuperficial runoff. People very often forget about subsuperficial runoff, which is one of the most dangerous things that can happen, right? Maybe the water infiltrates on the surface, hits the hard pan, and then starts taking stuff down. And then most grasses are very good at structuring the soil superficially, right? So they really create, because they have all this very, like these hairy, bushy roots that really hold the soil together. So I wouldn't really worry about being vetiver necessarily. I would just find very strong, vigorous grasses and plant it along with pigeon pea and other.
Yeah, we don't seem to be able to get pigeon pea in New Zealand. We have a lot of plants that are banned from overseas, and I haven't been able to get pigeon pea here. Is
pigeon pea banned?
I'm not sure. I haven't been able to get it. Nobody here is supplying it, which indicates perhaps.
What about tree lucerne?
We've got tree lucerne. I have difficulty getting that to grow here. I've got 4 trees, and I've tried taking cuttings, and I'm usually good at doing cuttings, and I find they grow to about half a meter, and then they die, and I think they rot.
Oh.
I'm not sure, but yeah, but
could
yeah,
be maybe too wet for them
at times. Yes, but anyway, but I have got 4 growing, and they're all growing in very dry places like clay banks, that sort of.
Okay.
Place. So maybe I'll just keep trying with those.
Yeah,
I have a problem with this.
Yeah, we could think of other plants maybe.
Sorry?
We could think of other plants that might grow better there.
Yes.
Or let me see what else could. What are you going to say, Janelle? I'm going to try to think of other species that could work nice.
I have a problem with this because, I have some erosion at the edge of the valley, and I've tried a few things and I haven't got it quite right yet. Even the vetiver I tried. I find that, because it's through cuttings, it's not dense enough, It's, you really have to, because I really like something to be really dense. So, and then I'm thinking, I'd like to have something that I could seed, something that's native that I could, throw seeds so I can have some dense. But then, if it's raining, these seeds are going to get washed down. It's a bit tricky. I'm finding this really tricky.
I believe vetiver very seldom.
Video about this, Felipe.
Yeah, I believe the vetiver very seldom sets seed. It's one of those plants that is rare to get.
You think
seed
I
off.
saw some seeds? Yeah, exactly. So it's from cuttings, right?
Yeah.
That it gets propagated. And like if I get so many and I have to, every 50 centimeters, it's not dense enough for me.
No, it's not. It needs every 20. Yeah, 20 centimeters.
Yeah. So 20 by 20
is a lot.
By 250 meters that I have to cover.
No, it's much better to sow a row of seeds.
Yeah, sow a row of seeds, right?
Right.
But then, since it's in the slope, you need to open up a small furrow so that the seeds are inside the furrow.
Yes, and
so that it doesn't.
I need to get a good balance
of.
Yeah, of like a nice rainy, like cloudy weathers, but it's not those.
Down.
Yeah, you don't want torrential rain.
It's really tricky. It's really tricky that.
What about alfalfa? Does alfalfa grow there?
Yes, it grows very well here. Yes. I hadn't
that's
thought
an idea.
That. Yeah, that's a good thought. Thank you, Felipe. I hadn't thought of alfalfa in the alleys or even in the tree rows. That would be good.
I think it's a good one.
Yeah.
I always like to remember that everything that's good for the cattle, it's good for the soil. So.
Oh, okay, that's a good. I grow a lot of clover, white clover and red clover, but that's seasonal more.
Yeah, I see. Alfalfa will stay, and alfalfa, I imagine, I've never worked a lot with alfalfa, but I imagine it's got a pretty strong and deep root.
Oh yes, you actually need to cut it at least 4 times a year here.
There you go.
So that's how they harvest it. They make a lot of alfalfa hay here.
Fantastic.
And the more you cut it, the more it grows. So
yeah, some bamboo as well.
Yes, I've just put in a row of bamboo. Yeah, the gracilis, the graceful one. It's
that's beautiful.
It's a clumping bamboo. Yeah. Yes. It's very expensive.
Might be something that works for me.
One. Bamboo also works pretty well for the contour lines in the slope. That could.
Oh, okay. Right. Oh well, I have to propagate.
And since it's clumping, it's not going to be.
It's not going to
take it. It's not going to take over all of the slope.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing.
Yes. Good.
Definitely don't want that.
Cool. All right. Well, I'm definitely gonna bug you for some ideas out here. I'll show you my plot, Felipe. Maybe we can do a video and a follow-up and see if I have any chance of stopping this erosion.
Definitely, we should work on that.
I tried last year diverting the water and everything, but it's a bit of a joke. Didn't really work. And
yeah, you can do it, but it needs to be pretty, because the thing is, it needs to be.
There's no structure in the soil.
Yeah, that's the problem.
That's the thing.
Problem.
The structure doesn't hold.
Yeah, you gotta get vegetation there. So we're gonna have some ideas and discuss that. We can definitely produce some videos about it.
There's a lot of discussion here with leaching and erosion using microzoa in the soil for erosion control.
Using what?
Microzoa. Am I not saying that right? The fungi.
Oh, right.
How do you pronounce it?
Mycorrhiza.
Mycorrhiza. Yeah, I always get it right.
But I'm not sure that's the proper name. The proper name.
Well, we know what you're talking about that. No, well, in New Zealand, we had originally very heavy native forest, which was very suitable, of course, for the particular land. And that was all cleared for farming by the colonials. And they're now finding, after many years of artificial fertilizers and overgrazing and planting the wrong crops, that erosion has become a major hazard in farming, to the extent where a lot of the insurance companies will no longer pay out on when half your hillside falls down. And there's a strong movement for regenerative farming, and they're using the
mycorrhiza
a lot in helping to stabilize steep land that's being eroded badly. So that
the thing about definitely mycorrhiza, it's a major actor in that, because there's two main things that mycorrhiza fungi do besides mobilizing phosphorus. But one, they've got how do you call the hyphae, the tentacles of mycorrhiza?
Hyphae and mycelium?
Hyphae.
Yeah.
Right. So they have these very long hyphae, and they will kind of hold the soil together. Yeah. And the other factor is that they produce a protein called glomalin, which structures the soil. It aggregates the soil. Right, so it creates aggregates in the soil, and that's not only it helps the soil hold more water, it helps with the drainage, and it makes the soil less prone to erosion because the particles are bigger. Since they hold the particle together, you have a bigger aggregate, and that's just heavier for the water to take.
Right.
But you cannot simply apply, like create a culture of mycorrhiza and then pulverize it in the soil and just hope they will fix the problem, because actually the soil already has that mycorrhiza. You need to create, and of course we can help enhance the population and help it grow faster by capturing it, multiplying it, and applying it. But you need to create the conditions for them to thrive. And there are actually many species that are very good at making associations with mycorrhiza. One of them is cassava. That's one of the reasons why cassava is such an important crop in tropical regions for agroforestry, even as a service crop. And it is amazing. You see, when you harvest cassava, you see how well the soil is structured, and that's in part due to mycorrhiza. Sorghum is also a very good one for that. That's one of the reasons sorghum is a lot more drought resistant than corn and a lot less demanding in fertility. It's a lot better at associating with mycorrhiza. So it's interesting.
Nabo?
Turnip?
Turnip?
I don't think turnip is very good at associating with this family.
All right.
Brassicas, they're not especially good at associating with microorganisms, if I'm not wrong. But turnip is very good for breaking down compacted layers. So that's definitely one thing to bear in mind. So looking for these species that are very good at associating with microorganisms is definitely an important way to help with erosion. The Australian pine, right? Casuarina, it's also an important one. It's very fast growing. I imagine that over there, it's probably even faster than at least what we saw in Portugal. It was quite impressive. Its growth, because it was it's already 6 meters tall, I think, in a couple of years.
Oh, right. My casuarina hasn't grown that fast, but I think it's a bit waterlogged. I think where it is, I get runoff. There's a main highway runs along the top of my property. So I get the runoff from that, and it's channeled near where my casuarinas are planted. And after 4 years, they're probably 5 meters high.
Okay.
Not a very big one.
We made proper nests. I'm not saying you wouldn't have done that, but we gave like proper nests with deep manuring, and we treated it like almost like a fruit tree. So I think
it was well
treatment.
It was well
in this very blessed land already. It was very rich. And
this is the thing about also eucalyptus that grow in agroforestry that are planted for fruit production or for vegetable production. They grow ridiculously fast, and eucalyptus is already a fast growing tree. But when you plant an eucalyptus just for the eucalyptus, they're never going to grow as fast as in an agroforestry, because they're getting the leftovers from the fruit tree and from the vegetable garden. So that's also why producing bananas in a vegetable system, it's so amazing, because the bananas will thrive off the leftovers from the vegetables. That's why I always say your secondary crop needs to be less demanding than your main crop, because then it lives off the leftovers of the main crops.
Right.
So but still, of course, it was irrigated also, and it was very well manured, and it was an amazing soil. The soil needed absolutely nothing. We only used manure, so that was a pretty special place, but still pretty impressive growth as well. We can never expect, of course, plants in subtropical and dry regions such as Portugal to grow as fast as they grow here in the tropics. Never, it's never going to happen.
Right.
It's a different pace. So but definitely a good plant also to use in these slopes.
Right. Well, thank you for that.
Cool.
Nice.
All right.
We can wrap
I think we can wrap it up.
It's been a pleasure.
I've really enjoyed it. Yeah, that's good.
Thanks very much, Sean. I'm sorry for the short notice.
Yeah, we forgot to release the link last week, so it was a bit a short notice. But anyway,
tell me, did you get my reminder message yesterday? Did you get that? I sent an email asking if the Q&A was on.
Yeah, we got it in the Patreon inbox.
Good.
But not through
that
email.
It's good to know that the messages do get through, because we do actually have a lot of trouble. I'm on wireless broadband, so I'm not on I don't have any wires in the ground for my communication, and sometimes it doesn't work very well.
Okay.
It's satellite.
So. Oh, okay. We got, check it out. We got a message here from Permadynamics in New Zealand.
Oh, good. Yeah.
They said they've got pigeon pea.
Oh, yay. Thank you.
So maybe you can contact them and see if you can grab some to multiply it.
Yep, I will do that. Thank you so much. That's great.
Good. There you go.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for watching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for the connection.
If you're on the YouTube, hit the like button.
Yeah.
Have you guys around and to get involved, in the Q&As, become, be part of our Patreon team and support the channel, help us keep on going. That's cool.
Exactly. All right, everyone. Jill, thanks a lot. People on YouTube, thanks a lot. People who are watching the recording, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see each other very soon.
Great.
Peace.